It's wonderful to have Alex with us. We are very excited about this evening because we are talking about what is going to make a great startup in 2024. We have a partner of Firemark Ventures, which is part of a very well-known group of companies called Insurance Australia Group. And Alex has been there more than once. Amazing when you hear a little bit about Alex's story. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Founder Institute. We'll talk about when the next cohort starts, and then we'll hear from Alex. Let me tell you about the Founder Institute. It is an organisation that's supported by Addison's, who is a well-known Australian law firm who has a practice that specialises in helping founders build meaningful and enduring technology companies. And the local team for Founder Institute in Australia and New Zealand is Phoebe Zhang, who is a growth and sustainability expert, Paul Krajewski, who is a product manager extraordinaire. And I come from a technical background and these days spend most of my time as a venture capitalist at Right Click Capital. Now, some people have asked before today, what is the Founder Institute? You might have heard of investors who really want people to be operating their business in a full-time capacity. And these are investors who are after fast growth startups with a round of seed capital. And then you might have heard of seed or accelerator type programs where you've got to be full-time and you've got to create product market fit traction with your startup. And then you might have heard of things such as conferences or startup weekends or lean startup machine, which is where founders or potential founders are putting their toe in the water. Founder Institute sits in the middle of that. We are a pre-seed accelerator. We help to get you to your destination faster by helping you get this initial traction so that you can prepare for pre-seed funding. We are the number one place in the world to turn ideas into fundable startups and startups into global businesses. And don't just take my word for it. We are in over 100 countries, 200 cities. We have nearly 7,000 alumni, and our founders have raised a ton of money to grow their businesses. Some of the portfolio companies, and you can see some have been listed, like my friend Gagan Biani's Udemy. A number have been acquired. And in Australia, we've had a number of success stories too. Here's Fundable, which is a company that recently came out of the program based in Sydney, Dylan McDonald, and he's come up with a business to help people with dietary needs. It's a growing market. Now, the Founder Institute is a hard program, although it's a part-time program. We practice brutal honesty. We will score each of your pitches out of 5, and we do not allow mentors to give you a 3. We want them to tell you it's fantastic, giving you a 5, or it could do with a lot of work, a 1. We also want founders to get stuff done. Do you know those people who are fantastic at talking, but not so good at delivering? Well, we want you to be good both at talking, pitching well, but also doing. Did you also know that less than 40% of people who start the Founder Institute program do not make it to the end? And that's by design. It is difficult. And some of the reasons why people decide to not complete the program is that they've received feedback that what they thought was going to be their startup dream is perhaps already overcompeted, or they'll need to do more work to come up with something that's more competitive. People who leave are able to enroll in the next cohort for free. If you are an idea stage business, we recommend that you adopt the launch track. This is where you pitch throughout the 14 weeks. You learn how to perform customer development. Of course, you'll be creating and developing your own leadership skills, as well as sales and customer acquisition, product development, and revenue modeling. For those founders who are a little more progressed, a little closer to funding, there's more focus on due diligence, KPIs, growth strategy, and generating traction. So we take on founders who are tossing up 1 or 2 or even 3 ideas. Do I go left, right, or straight? Or if they're on the growth track, they've already launched a product and they're working out, it's ice cream, but do I go more for the caramel ice cream or the caramel chocolate ice cream or the honeycomb ice cream? All ice cream, probably of a similar colour. At the Founder Institute, we find great people. We give them a devoted and global support network. you saw before, there are thousands of wonderful mentors around the world. We put them through a structured growth process and we provide a lifetime of support. We start off with the core program, the launch track and the grow track. After the core program, we have other programs to help founders build their product market fit, to get funding, to get their seed round away. And for those who've got their seed round away and want to close a venture round, a series round, we've got a 3-month program to help them do that. We've got a proven process to build quickly and cheaply. We're highly structured and sequential, getting things done. And there is constant feedback from mentors. Our next cohort begins in February next year, very soon. The final deadline for applications is the 28th of Jan. The earlier you apply, the more opportunity you'll have to get a glimpse of the details of what we're doing each week, so you can make use of that wonderful December and January period to not only get sand between your toes, but to get a head start on next year, so that when orientation begins, you're able to start the ground running. That's the Founder Institute. Would you mind painting a bit of a picture as to your background, because you did spend some time at ANZ and you love Firemark so much, you're back and you've been in insurance and sorts of things.
Yeah, so I mean, this is actually my 3rd time at Firemark. I'm the boomerang. I keep going and coming back. But I started off my career in asset management, originally in the UK. I moved to Australia about coming on 8.5 years ago, which is where I first fell into insurance with Firemark, and I helped do some of the earliest deals out of the fund back in sort of 2015, 2016. And then took a bit of a break and went to investment banking instead. I was an investment banker at JP Morgan for a few years before coming back to IAG for the second time. And IAG, just for context, so we're all aware, is Insurance Australia Group's corporate venture capital arm. It's $170 million under management at the moment across 2 funds. Typically backing companies from your seed stage through to your Series A, Series B, and then later. If you're
seed to Series A, Series B.
Yeah, that's right.
IAG, for everyone, is Insurance Australia Group, but they're better known for some of their consumer-facing brands like NRMA Insurance.
You're correct, yes. So NRMA is now a national brand, but also RACV and CGU as well. So RACV in Victoria. And the mandate here is very much on strategic first. Every investment that we make has to have some sort of strategic tie-in to the insurer. So it has to be able to help grow our core insurance business, or protect us from or unlock new revenue opportunities from investing 10, 15 years into the future.
There are different types of venture capital firms out there.
Correct.
There are some venture capital firms that are purely financial, and then there are other venture capital firms that have money from a parent like yours, which is Insurance Australia Group, and they're what someone might call a strategic venture capitalist or a corporate venture capitalist, CVC. And how would you describe the differences between those two?
Even CVC is considered on a bit of a spectrum, and the way I think about it is you've got on the left-hand side, you'd have your purely financial. So they would, even as a CVC, you're investing purely in companies that you think can deliver the highest financial returns. And then on the other end, you've got those that are, which is where IAG sits. Well, IAG kind of sits a little bit more towards the middle, where you're investing purely for the strategic benefit, the strategic value that you can create through the investment. So, an example within the IAG portfolios, we have invested in a company, it's a US-based company that uses satellite imagery to analyze the risk profile of a home and help make the insurance quoting process more seamless for customers and more accurate, and pricing processes more accurate for IAG. So those are the sorts of technology we would use. So we're quite narrow in our focus, whereas purely financial, CVCs and VCs can actually invest across a broader spectrum of opportunities that we couldn't even look at.
Right. So if someone came to you and wanted to get funding, and they were doing, let's say, something in the world of food that had nothing to do with insurance, then it's unlikely to be a fit for you. But if they had something to do with food that was somehow related to insurance, perhaps when you need to assist your customers in the event of an emergency or whatnot, that might be more relevant.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. If we believe that there is some tie back in to the company, to our IAG's purpose, or helping IAG deliver a strategic objective or a strategic imperative, then we can make an argument for investment. Well, we can certainly explore. We're certainly more likely to explore the investment opportunity. My other role as an associate partner with Black Nova Venture Capital. So that role, Black Nova Venture Capital is an Australian, so ESVC LP, Australian predominantly investor, very early stage. So pre-seed and seed is our primary source. We're typically first checking the door. We will back founders from pre-revenue, pre-product ideas, and back them through to kind of your Series A, maybe Series B, when you've got proven market fit and traction. So, and I think the beauty of having both the Firemark and the Black Nova roles is I look at the earlier stages plus the later stages as well, which is great. So then to your question on what do I think 2024 is going to hold versus 2023 and perhaps 2022, I'm cautiously optimistic for 2024. I think where we've seen a significant reset in valuations across most tech sectors, both public and private, but we've also got record amounts of capital just sitting on the sidelines. You've got valuations come down; they've come down to pre-COVID levels, so you've kind of almost got resetting, and then you've got interest rates hitting their peak, capital sitting on the side, ready to deploy. It feels like founders will start to see, or hopefully start to see, a number of price rounds again. Whereas I think 2023 and 2022, if you're an existing if you're a company in market, it was often extending runway, internal rounds, bridges, safes with or convertibles with pretty aggressive caps and discounts. And I think I'm hoping we'll see a normalization of terms and a return to price rounds again as well.
Yeah. So what's happened over the last couple of years, I think you're describing is how a bunch of companies might have taken on a bridge round or an extension round or taken a round where people were a bit scared of pricing, and instead of pricing the round officially, they took money in the form of a convertible note. Of course, it really isn't debt, even though it appears as debt on the balance sheet. That debt is meant to convert into shares at the next qualified financing event. And you talk about the cap, that is the value if that the shares is meant to convert at a maximum, assuming that the value isn't lower.
Correct. And what we saw as well during the last kind of 12, 18 months or so, some more aggressive investor terms, so less founder friendly, so bigger discounts and conversion, lower caps, enhanced liquidation preferences, those sorts of things. So and that was just a sign of the times. Typically, if you're out in market raising, you were a price taker rather than a price setter like you would have seen in 2021, 2020.
Yeah. Okay. So that's positive. So you're expecting, at least positive from the perspective of the founders, that the terms are going to be hopefully more favourable.
I think so. Like, the cautiously optimistic, to put it that way.
Yeah. Well, that squares. I've just come back from Singapore, where I met with a bunch of colleagues there in the venture capital space, and colleagues both that were backers, financiers, as well as those who were on the startup side seeking capital at some stage. And there is a cautious optimism because you do have funds who have dry powder, which is money that they have raised from investors they have not yet spent. And there are a bunch of companies that are continuing to be started every month with fantastic founders, and they are tackling problems that have large application. They've got solutions, hopefully, to problems that are big, and that means there's opportunity to seek funding and hopefully be one of the winners in that space. Like for you, what are your top few tips that you would be giving your good friends around creating a fundable startup?
Be resilient. Be prepared to hear no a lot. People are going to tell you your baby is ugly, but don't believe them. Like keep going, keep having the next conversation. and don't lose heart. It is going to be a challenge. Raising capital is hard. Building a business is hard. But what you're trying to do here is tackle a problem. You're trying to change something, and change doesn't happen without a bit of resilience. So that's the first thing I would say. From thinking about how to position your business, and some of the things you might want to consider is what's your why? What is the problem you are trying to solve? Why have you started this business? And how is what you're going to do solve this problem? And well, not only solve the problem, but turn into a market opportunity. Because ultimately, that's if you're a pure play VC, you're looking for a market opportunity and a venture style return off the money that you're going to be lending. So what does that look like? What does that how big is the opportunity? How exciting is it? So really try and sell that to the investors as well, and help them understand the narrative, help them understand the why you're doing this, and what's the outcome going to be.
Okay, you can come up with ways to position or to consider, but the foundations, the cornerstones of successful founders, entrepreneurs that you've seen in your years, is folks who are resilient. They're going to get a lot of no's, and sometimes no's from people they respect or no's from people they look up to.
Yep.
And it's really important to get inspired by Simon Sinek and know your why.
Be able to tell the story, be able to help, if you can, really tell a compelling story, get the investors excited, and they get to understand the problem you're trying to solve. You're often, you're often going to have more than just one conversation. You're not going to get turned down at the first night. First conversation, the hardest bit is getting to the second, and then the third.
Yes. Yes, I relate to that. And before I mention the company Fedini, Dylan McDonald, who started that business and is still the CEO, part of his inspiration for wanting to fix the dietary type issues that people solve when they dine out at restaurants or when they get takeout is because he has been on the receiving end of being told, this food is gluten-free or this food doesn't have certain ingredients. And he thought, fantastic, I'm going to eat the food. And then, of course, not feel good for hours thereafter. So he's got a personal connection to that why. And that personal connection is, in fact, an example of many, many other people who have dietary requirements or dietary intolerances. And he's been able to create a business off the back of that. We've spoken about the resilience and the why. Let's say you've heard from a good friend. You tick them on the resilience, you tick them positively on the why. What are some of the things that you would then be looking for? And perhaps you could compare and contrast your screen when you have the beautiful IAG Firemark hat on. It's like the fireman's hat, isn't it? Or when you might have the Black Nova hat on, because you're saying that Black Nova is more broad. Black Nova invests really early, sometimes pre-revenue.
So let me start with the Firemark hat then. It's very, very different. So the first screen for me there is it strategically aligned? It's a very simple yes or no. So there are a raft of strategic priorities and our investment focus areas that we can look at. If it doesn't fall into one of those buckets or is clearly outside of that, then I don't even bother looking at the rest. It's because it's not going to get anywhere. But with Black Nova, where we are, we're in a very early stage, pre-seed and seed, B2B SaaS, Australian domiciled. There are a few little hurdles there to get through first of all, but it's still a far broader investable universe. And our mantra at Black Nova is boring is better. We would like to invest in the unturn-offable tech. If you are a pre-seed founder, you're unlikely to have market traction. You may have a product. Often it's just an idea and a story, and that's what we'll start to look at. If you can get us excited at the story and back to the why, and what the market opportunity is going to be, then we'll take a conversation and have a look. The second is your expertise as well. Coming in that early that's a sort of early investor. If you've got the relevant skills, you've got in that particular domain, or you've got transferable experience that we can believe that you've got the capability to deliver the solution to the problem, then that excites us as well, because that's ultimately who we're backing. If it's we're not at the earlier stages, we are backing you, we're backing the founder. So we have to have conviction that they can do what they say they can do.
Firemark, the first screen is the strategic, and then
Correct.
of course you have a look at the team and a whole bunch of other items. And then when it comes to Black Nova, it's almost one of your first screens is, could this business be creating a product, a software product that people cannot turn off? It's perhaps an invoice product, or it's an API product that sits between bits of software, or maybe it's a tool of trade that becomes essential to how someone operates a business.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I mean, if you look at if you go into the Black Nova portfolio page, you can see some of the companies that we have backed. So and they are typically in construction, government communications, some in cybersecurity. So but there's a lot of things in there. It's just the health and safety. It's typically boring industries, but actually have a number of problems worth solving there as well, and big market opportunities for them.
Yes, makes sense. And you have a stickiness, low levels of churn, the ability.
Correct. Correct. They're typically not. Once they're adopted, they're unturnoffable. People cannot live without them once they've got them.
Can you tell us a little bit about one of the investments you're most proud of, and walk us through the steps of the investment? Were there any investments where you originally said no and then later you said yes? Because you shared a little bit about how you do need to knock on doors.
The imagery company that we were talking about at the start, and this is one of my investments that I keep falling back to. Look, what I really liked about this is we came in fairly early. But it was so clearly strategically aligned, from our perspective, at IAG, that it just made complete sense. But the business just couldn't see it for whatever reason. There was one of the challenges you have with IAG is you've got all these stakeholders who ultimately have to endorse the investment you're making before it can get away.
The ventures team saw that it fitted with your corporation's strategic priorities.
It just made sense, but the business was so consumed with what its day-to-day priorities, it's 100 other fires that it was trying to put out that they couldn't see it. So it took us, we had to take a real leap of faith, and that we could in the future do something with it. It wasn't going to be an immediate use case, immediate opportunity, but made the investment and educated the business and took a bet on the founder. This guy lived out in the States, running his business from the US, high intensity guy, and we knew we were taking a risk, but it was great. And again, there wasn't an immediate use case. It took maybe probably 6 to 12 months of trialing and erroring, but then ultimately became a core part of the IAG process, the IAG platform, and it's still in use. Signed multiple commercial contracts. So that's from an IAG perspective, and then from a Black Nova perspective, I think it was betting. My favorite company we've invested in since I've been there. It is slightly off Black Nova mandate. It's still B2B SaaS, still very early stage, but it's not boring. It's trying to tackle a huge problem in communications for small business. And this one feels like, for us, the next kind of Canberra opportunity that's what really, really got us excited, just because of the size of the problem they're trying to solve.
Okay, no, very good. And could you share how many meetings? What's the steps that takes? That you take to get to know a company?
And I use Black Nova because IAG's kind of takes you die if you had how many meetings that would take. With Black Nova, we move much quicker. So as a minimum, it's going to be 3. So you'd have to meet all of the investment team.
Okay.
Yeah. As a minimum, it's 3, because what we like to do is, I'll take some of these initial calls, and we'll rope in the 2 other partners in there as well, and the 2 founders of the company, which is Matt Brown and Darcy Norton, who are founders themselves and have been very successful, have multiple exits under the belt, and even Darcy, who ran his own fund for a while, venture capital out of Melbourne. And if we all 3 of us feel that there's something there, but aren't quite sure, we may then open up our venture partner network. So Black Nova has 16 venture partners. All of them are subject matter experts in individual fields. Could be cyber, go-to-market, strategy, AI, those sorts of things. And we draw upon those to help us screen out the deal flow. And there may be 1 or 2 other meetings after that, and then we'd look to pre-issue a term sheet shortly after.
Question for Al. Can you please elaborate on your tip, get investors excited?
So what I'm talking about there is really helping them understand the market opportunity, getting them excited about the problem you're solving, and the fact that it is a big, valuable market opportunity that we can understand, we can make some money off. Because that's ultimately what you're in there. It may be a 10 or 12-year journey, but we're after a category killer. We want the returns. So that's what I mean by get excited. To help them
Okay.
see that vision, see the
Yeah.
opportunity.
How it all stacks up. Okay, very good. Roy's got a question. Would you fund a business, and perhaps I'll expand it, would a VC fund a business, VC that you know, would they fund a business that directly helps the government, for example, something in the NDIS space?
With Black Nova, we've invested in a business that helps with NDIS and healthcare related payments. So it helps reduce the friction in there. So we wouldn't, and that's not just a domestic challenge; it's an international one as well. So
Right.
so it's not just helping governments here and helping businesses that provide services to those patients in Australia. It's an international opportunity as well. So yes, we would.
Al, you mentioned Black Nova is investing in the boardroom. I'm curious if that is your firm value as a company.
Now, a lot of the tech that we back is still emerging. So we absolutely will take a look at it. If it's B2B, early stage, Australian based, then we will take a look at it. The mantra or the boring is better comes from just our backgrounds. We've got insurance, one of the most boring industries you could possibly think of. And then you've got Matt and Darcy. They got their licks in this kind of safety tech. So again, very, very boring. So that's where it comes from. We believe in boring is better.
Question: what would investors do if they receive a deck for a product that might compete with an existing portfolio company? That's a really good question.
It depends on the investor. I think some investors like to have a bit of competitive tension within the portfolio, are willing to back multiple horses in a particular vertical. We tend, if it's too closely competing, we tend to stay away from it at Black Nova, because we work so hard with our founders. We are very, very, very hands-on. We're as hands-on as they need us to be. And we don't want them to feel like either we're swapping secrets, favoring one over the other. And I think if you've got two very similar companies in the mix there, it makes that conversation a bit challenging.
Okay, makes sense. So you tend to have one horse in a particular race, not two horses.
Correct. But you may get some investors that are very focused on a particular vertical, and they'll back multiple horses in there. And it's just it's known from the start that we're going to invest in. We might invest in a competitor or a competing offering in the future. But that's just the investment strategy, and that's the risk when you take the money.
What funding opportunities are available for a pre-MVP stage startup, assuming the product meets specific criteria, such as being B2B focused, initially targeting the Australian market, having founders with direct industry experience?
There are multiple funding avenues. You can either look down the VC route, and there are VCs that go that early. There may also be grants available for you as well. I think it would just depend on the type of problem you're trying to solve for. But there are VCs out there that can even go and help you with MVP funding. It just depends who you're going to talk to.
And what's your view on the necessity of a technical co-founder?
We certainly like to see kind of both technical and commercial. It helps, right? If you've got someone in there who can actually do, who can actually build, support the vision that the commercial or the sales co-founder is selling, that's always a plus. So we like to see, seeing a co-founder in there or a founder, even if it's a sole founder, with domain and technical expertise, does give us a bit of confidence.
How insurance companies value revenue increase, the risk reduction.
My question back is risk reduction where? So, I mean, if you can help profit drivers for an insurance company, GWP or your revenue is obviously one of them. So the number of premiums you sell times the price you sell them for, but then it's actually the loss ratios as well. So if you can help an insurance company reduce its risk exposure, write policies that people pay for but don't need to claim on, then you're going to help them increase their bottom line. Ultimately, some of our biggest risks at the moment are in the climate and kind of national nat perils, which are proving very difficult to price appropriately for. There's one in 1 in 100 chance storms are happening, once or twice a year now.
What strategies do you recommend for forming partnership with financial institutions or non-government organisations to bolster credibility?
Ask yourself the question, okay, which are most aligned to what it is you're trying to build here? So, probably something like that, the big four probably aren't going to be your first port of call, but perhaps some of the smaller, the credit unions, some of the tier 2, tier 3 banks may be more interesting. There may also be other communities out there that you could partner with to get up at, to enough critical mass that when you're starting to have these conversations with these financial institutions, you're taken a bit more seriously. I know it's hard when you're starting a community, if you've not got the member base there, they're going to ask so what? Why should I be talking to you versus others? So, there are a number of these, more purpose-driven VCs out there at the moment, emerging out there. You've got those backed by NGOs. There's some even those backed by governments. Governments themselves are issuing grants and funding to companies that are, tackling the problems that are currently within their mandate. So I would be looking. And another good, perhaps a good way to do it is, talking to your local MP in the city or state that you're operating in. They will often know, or may be able to provide some guidance on what kind of government funding is available.
In a situation where you're approached by a non-technical founder saying that they have a tech co-founder, but that tech co-founder is not able to join properly before funding because they're currently employed, they've got to pay the bills. Would you see that as a red flag?
We do see it. We often see, founders or co-founders coming to us where one of them has a job that does pay the bills, because you're not always in the position to move right away. Right? So we do see it. It's not unusual, and quite frankly, I personally respect that. But the fact that they're willing to work 2 jobs to run hard, and if they were to get funding, they give you the commitment that they're going to move over full time, and that'd be your focus. And that's what I'd unpack through our discussions. But I've seen it a few times before.
Thank you very much for joining us, Al. Have a wonderful evening. We appreciate you sharing your insights and your wisdom with us.
Well, thank you. And thank you all very much for having me along. Hopefully it was useful. If you would like to ask me any more questions on LinkedIn, please feel free, or reach out via Black Nova.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.